Hello and welcome. We are going to be chatting with Nick from Baltimore City FC. So let me go ahead and introduce our guest, Nick. If you can, I guess, introduce yourself and just like what you do for the club and just kind of general information about yourself or the club to our listeners.
Thing. And Jordan, thanks for having us on. Um, I am Nick. I'm the managing director of Baltimore City FC. This is our first year of existence, though in some way, we've existed last year as well. And we're currently playing in the Maryland Major Soccer League with some news coming out soon and where we're going to head next year. But that's the skinny of it. That's who throughout this show. Really, we're going to really dive more into who we are and our approach to soccer in our state and where we're going to go from here.
All right, yeah. Thank you for taking the time to come on here and talk about the club. So, just for all of our listeners here, I'm just going to share that this is typically for my side podcast called Charm City Soccer Cast, but I'm going to be sharing it on all of our podcast feeds, just to kind of explore what some lower level U.S. soccer looks like. So you mentioned what league they play in. Can you kind of maybe describe to everyone like what level that's at, or uh, you know what makes that like what type of teams are populated into that level, and uh, you know, just what maybe what that entails, because I think most people don't even realize that maybe that level exists.
Well, you'd be surprised. The Maryland Majors has existed actually in some form. I think it actually predates World War One. In some form, it had a
Mm-hmm.
different name, and the same kind of people would be involved, and you know things develop the way they do. But nominally called the Maryland Majors has existed since the '60s, and um, it used to be pretty much the only thing around. It was a lot of teams from basically Baltimore City, but also around the area, and has been the starting or jumping, area for a number of other clubs. It's hard pressed to find a club that hasn't spent at least one season in the Maryland majors and then either gone up, down, or sideways, essentially. And where it stands is basically the top level. It's one of the USAS, was it US Adult Soccer Association leagues. So it is, by one definition, you'll find people say, oh, it's fifth definition in the pyramid. Some will
Mm-hmm.
say it's sixth. I say it's 5.5 because it's actually in a process of being sewn into the pipeline that is the NISA side of things. So
Okay.
it is considered a feeder league to the EPSL, which is itself a feeder league to NISA Nation
Right.
and NISA. Now, the caveat to that is it's something new for the Maryland Majors, and other leagues on that pyramid have had experience with that, particularly further north in the New York area. That's sort of where the inspiration is to try to put things together and make this a regional pipeline. And I love it. I think it's something that has proven to be pretty exciting. This, we'll dive right into it, but I think this is the clear and now the best way to actually proceed for soccer in Maryland as soccer in this country starts to enter another chapter
Mm-hmm.
that is the World Cup and what follows. And we are in talks with the Eastern Premier Soccer League to become basically their Baltimore City franchise. I'm sure we'll get to that later, but that's essentially where things are. The Maryland Majors is one of a number of amateur soccer leagues in the area. The teams that are in it tend to be more towards the southern, Baltimore City and south of
Yeah.
it, that sort of corridor area. I know that there is a competing league that's further north around the Towson area. So I think it, maybe not by design, but certainly just how it sort of fell and landed, is that all the leagues do have their own regional focus, barring some exceptions. So we'll see where I, I'm not affiliated with the league. I do want to
Right,
see the
right.
league grow, and I think this has been a very transformative year for the league, and I'm very interested to see where it goes from there.
Awesome. So, when you talk about the future of soccer in this state, right? It's something that I want to kind of talk about because there is, um, I would say, a common theme that this market kind of gets skipped over a bit when we talk about uh, professional soccer, even. We just had, we were constantly rumored for USL championship, and then that kind of just fell through the last group that was trying to bring that here. Um, and then now it looks like maybe we get a stadium for an MLS Next Pro team for DC United, which I'm not sure the city will really care about, going to see academy kids pretty much for a DC team. And then a lot of the other professional teams are kind of more in this more in the south, right? Like Maryland Bobcats, who play in NISA, but they play at the Soccerplex, which um, for some of us that are more north, I'm in Harford County, so for me, anything that's like south of Baltimore or closer to that, Annapolis, Prince George's County area is a hike. A hike. I've gone to the Soccerplex a few times to see Open Cup games when DC played there a lot. I haven't been able to get out there for the Bobcats recently, but I want to. Um, so I guess when you're looking at the Baltimore market itself and just the viability of it, we see other areas kind of get teams that maybe have the same sort of market share or market size of Baltimore, but it seems like we're never really in the talk for those Major League Soccer teams, or even, like I said, any of those USL teams in serious talks.
So I'll try to contribute to this, both as a fan
Mm-hmm.
and as the managing director of one of many teams in this country and in this area, and try to balance that as best as possible. Um, I'm with you on I think I'm not going to go to a Maryland Bobcats game as a fan. It's I don't. To me, the sport has to really be about the connection you have to the club. Soccer is a very funny, finicky sport that way. And so I grew up in Germany, and you had your local team. Like, I could see the stadium from my house. I went to go see them um, do practice at the field that was free. I could never afford tickets at the time,
Right.
but that's what the team that I was supported, and we would talk about it at school. Like, the neighborhood, and at that point the entire west side of the city, um, that was the team. There was a team 20-minute metro ride east, and that was a different. Despite being the same city, that was a different country. I didn't get it. I had no connection to it. The history didn't speak to me, and that sort of tribalism would even come up with sort of weird reasons why you just wouldn't support that team, valid or not. In this country, because it's all about distance, it's just too friggin' far, and I'm not going to go on a regular basis to a team that, albeit might have Maryland in it. I don't. I'm not. It's the same reason when I go to DC United. It's fun. It's a show, but I'm not going to wear a DC United jersey around the city of Baltimore, because that's, to me, and that might be an extreme perspective, a little ridiculous. Coming to your other side of things, yeah, Baltimore is, since the existence of Soccer Talk, part of the discussion and discourse of a candidate. and it's been used as a bargaining tool for other pro teams. Well, if we're not going to get what we want, we're going to move over there, and I think that's honestly actually kind of offensive for any soccer fan in the city. But we move on. Don't let it affect you too much. And it's coming up again. I think the same sort of feelings with, well, we can't put our academy in Northern Virginia because we already have a affiliate in Northern Virginia. Let's just put it, out there somewhere. And that out there somewhere, people live there. And if you're going to put something that has the term DC on it, I find that weird to me. I mean, that makes it very clear that the people who run this organization view Baltimore as a suburb of DC, which
Right.
is we don't have time to dive into why that's wrong, but we'll focus on the soccer side of things. It's just not right. And am I surprised that Baltimore gets skipped on by investors? No, not at all. The city gets skipped on by investors outside of soccer almost on a weekly basis. That's just, there's something weird and cursed, if you will, about this place. And what happens, actually, it does mean that you, me, our neighbors, we have to do it our own way. And that's there are many examples of that in soccer and out of soccer, of people just succeeding here because they form a collective with their neighbors or like-minded individuals who work in the same areas they do here and find success and build their way up. What that means long term, I don't know, but it's certainly the way I would gauge the temperature in this city right now.
Yeah, and I think to clarify for people if they're listening and they're not from this area, um, there's a lot of like you said, where people I think outside of here, especially or in the DC area, kind of treat Baltimore as like a suburb of DC. Baltimore fans are not usually somebody that's going to root for a DC team. When we didn't have the Ravens, they weren't rooting for Washington. We don't have an NBA team or NHL team. Most Baltimore fans just don't affiliate themselves with the Wizards or Capitals. So it would be very hard, I think, for a DC team like United to come in and have their MLS Next Pro team here and find success, especially if they named it something like DC United 2 and not, giving it its own little flair. But even in like the bigger soccer hubs, nobody really goes to MLS Next Pro games. You get like 500 fans, so I'm just not really sure on how that would even
So
draw
there's,
enough. But
I would add something to that. Without giving too much away, I think, and it's not really breaking news, but I think one can certainly say, look, there is going to be an MLS Next Pro team in the Baltimore area affiliated with DC. That's a given. One does not need to dig hard and realize, oh, that's, it's there. And DC United isn't, the conversation you and I are having has been had in boardrooms, it's been had over beers, it's been had it's been had. DC United is not going to name, I'm assuming DC United will not be that silly and name their team anything related to Washington or DC for something that's within a ball kick away from downtown Baltimore. That's just, they're not dumb. But the rest of us are going to know that. And there will be folks who are going to see this is a good thing. And sure, I think having a professionalized pipeline, and we need to get into this, in amongst all the other ones that exist currently in the area, that is tied in with DC United, that's awesome. I root for that. This place is rich with talent, and it needs some sort of draw from that. That's a good thing. But with you on this one. No. The people who march to our game with flags and a jersey aren't going to go see a DC game.
right,
DC
right.
MLS Next Pro. It's not going to happen. And the same guy who during the Ravens Nationals fiasco a couple years ago is less likely to be like, I'm not going to support that team. That's a DC team. That's a that's literally a double A or single A team in Baltimore when we should be having our own organization to begin with.
Right, right. So kind of moving on from that and the market itself, because we've been able to have a indoor team. Blast are still going on pretty well. So we can, they even get radio airtime on like sports channels every so often where they'll have the coach on or people on. But so looking at this club, Baltimore City FC, where does the club leadership and yourself here see opportunities for the club uh, in this community, in Charm City? What are like the what opportunities do you have? If you can't share where they're playing next year or whatever, that's fine. But like, uh, how high can this club go?
I think it's important to really give, whether it's give kudos or put an underline about the other teams that are in operation in the area and how much incredible work they've done, laying down a framework and being basically pillars that are the essence, essentially, of soccer culture in this city. I think the Baltimore Blast, they're known nationwide. They're known in or continent wise at this point. That is a historically relevant team to the game that is soccer, albeit a different form, and their affiliates as well. The Baltimore Kings have been around for a number of years, and what they have done is immense. And I know intimately the organization somewhat, and I think I'm so excited when they come out with news and their association with a new team out in Salisbury. That's super awesome.
Salisbury
The
Steaks, right?
That's right. The explosion that is the Annapolis Blues, awesome, excellent. I love it, and I think all of these pieces, what they're doing is just throwing dynamite that is the hunger of fans of the sport in this city. And one thing comes clear, which is one has to do the homework. From last year's summer on, as we were coming out, of the pandemic, sort of the opening stage of the pandemic, of post-pandemic rather, I felt very frustrated as a fan because I spent the majority of the pandemic watching soccer, like most of us, on the screen. I was like, okay, I need to feel this atmosphere in person and not drive an hour to go get it. And I spoke with a couple of contacts that I knew here in the city, and we had sort of, in the back of a napkin, had sort of had some ideas over a beer. I was like, what would it take? Who do we know? And it took a little bit of its life on its own, but then I kind of stopped and said, hang on. This has been done countless times before. And to be absolutely honest, smarter, wealthier, and more connected people than us have tried to do this, and it has not worked. Which means we cannot go any further unless we do our homework, essentially. And I called friggin' everyone. I emailed everyone. I called anyone who was either involved with, playing, managing, sponsoring, whatever, involved with some form of soccer team that existed in this city throughout the past 20 years. So that's Crystal Palace, that's the Bohemians, that's a number of semi-pro teams and elite amateur teams as well. And I asked a number of questions, but essentially it just came down to, why don't you exist anymore? And what did you learn? And what would you do differently now that didn't exist then, or not at all? And you'll notice that a couple of the takeaways are what we spoke about, mere minutes ago, which is soccer is a weird, finicky sport. You can't have a team at a certain level play really far away in a very uninteresting place next to a parking lot and try to build a culture from that. It's not going to happen. This is a sports city. People love the Orioles because they can go to Pickles and they can walk past the statue and they can talk with other Orioles fans that come from near, far and near, and they talk about, oh, this is my grandfather who lived in that row house over there when so and so hit the home run and went through his window. I made that up off the spot, but would you be surprised? No, because that is culture. Whether you're, and it's not, this isn't breaking news. People are watching Welcome to Wrexham and they're starting to realize there's a completely different way to sports fandom than going to a massive institution that is American football. I grew up with it. I see the stadium. I heard the stadium while eating dinner when goals were scored, and I knew that my team was winning. So when you have a field located in a parking lot really far away, no one, people might go for the competitive side of things, but there is that little bit of flavor missing, which is why it's really important to have a really good location with an identity that is blended in with wherever it is and can build on that both on game day, not on game day, before kickoff, and after kickoff. There are teams in this area that have done this well. The Annapolis Blues have done that well. Columbia FC have done that very well, and they've been at this for a number of years. And I believe they're going to come out with some interesting news soon, too, because of the work that they've done to make themselves the Columbia team. We're doing the same. People know us, and when they see our fans after the game having a beer together somewhere, people ask, like, those are interesting colors, those are local sponsors that I recognize, who are you guys? And they tell us, like, oh, that's awesome, that's a local team, that's a team that sews in local identity, local pride, and local themes in your club mantra. Down the line, people would say, that's part of the way they play, but we're not there yet. We don't have those resources available to us. So that was one thing that really came away, is like the location, especially here for a city that's so identity centric, is super important. It's you can't really grow without it. Winning helped. You cannot deny. Winning a trophy in our first season and then defending it in our second season, massive help. And we did that, again, holding back to our connections, through a number of targeted recruitment, really good tryouts, and really, really good cohesion with all the people involved with the project. I'm so happy. All of this leads to next year, and I will not say where we're going to go, but I can say that the locations, since we have 3 in mind, are places where there will be, you could bike there from almost anywhere in the city of Baltimore. You could take a bus. You could drive. But more importantly, you wouldn't be driving for long. And you wouldn't also, after the game, be just walking back to your car and going somebody else. You're going to be in a situation where either before the game you're walking with a group of people to the field or grounds or pitch or stadium. That's for you to find out later. And then afterwards, those same people are going to be milling about, having a drink, talking about the game, good or bad, hopefully more good than bad. And that's so important. I think American soccer fans like Mike, like you, like me, we're starting to realize that, which is you got to do more than just have a product. There are MLS teams that are now slowly realizing that they've reached their ceiling on attendance numbers because they're located in a place that no one wants to go. It's a hassle going to. The Chicago Fire moved to Soldier Field, which brings its own problems, but they're bringing in new fans. But that's not what today is about.
No, that's a good point. Location is always something that has been a problem for Baltimore-based teams. You mentioned the Bohemians, who spent a few seasons in Cedar Lane, Bel Air, which was great for me because I live up there. So I'm like getting to the game. I was, volunteering back then as a college kid and like selling merch and tickets. But like you said, people are not going to drive if they're in the city. They're not going to drive all the way out to northern Harford County to catch a game just because it has Baltimore in the title. Even the Blast now are playing in Towson's CQ Arena, um, their basketball arena. Um, and I think there was a few seasons where the Bows played in Baltimore City, but it was I can't recall where they played at.
They played at Loyola,
Yes, yep, yep.
and they played also at Latrobe. No, Bonvegna Field
Oh,
in
okay,
Canton. Which, yeah, those are the two I think city locations that they were playing in.
yeah, and that was always a thing that I think for some people it's a turnoff. Some people they don't even hear about it then because it's not anywhere that they're going to see signs of, right? Like if
Yeah,
you don't follow them on social, you don't know where they're playing or if you're a Baltimore soccer fan, you have no clue they exist if they're playing in Towson or Bel Air because you're not seeing that as you're driving to work or whatever. So the fact that the city itself, like wherever this team goes next year, that they can reach that via bikes or, like you said, driving, that's all huge for, you know, getting these more local teams off the ground.
yep. And whether it's USL Championship, USL 1, USL 2, up and down the pyramid, there are organizations recognizing that people will, go for dinner and then they will see people wearing the same colors, jerseys, drums, scarves, and they go, "Whoa, what's going on here?" As they head back to their car and head back home, and they'll ask and they'll find out. That's not going to happen when everybody's driving to a game.
Right. Right. And yeah, they're usually out in like these fields that are, like you said, just next to a parking lot, off the beaten path, not like right in the center of the city, or somewhere where people can see you, or you can walk to a bar, like you said, and get some um, beers after the game. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear about more of the future plans when it becomes available. But I guess also with this league that you're currently in, the Maryland Majors and stuff, if anybody was interested in watching the team, uh, or even following along for scores and standings, what is the best way to really follow that type of information?
Well, that is a that is a project I think that the league is starting to grapple with. I think the people who run it are excellent. They're talented. They're bringing on some new folks that are thinking outside the box because previously it was not as easy as one would think. So we're just trying to do whatever we can for the people who want to find out our scores and our standings and follow us. So we've started streaming in house. We've just been trying to be as well vocal as possible on updates and news on our end. Amplify whatever the league puts out that I think would be of interest to our audience. Maybe with the new developments vis-a-vis the league and its parent league, the one that it feeds into, perhaps one would hope that this would actually entice, or rather galvanize, the league to actually shore up a couple of things and be a little bit more proactive. They need all teams to be involved with that, and there is talks between the owners and managers of these teams to sort of give each other tips on how to grow, because when we all grow, it's we're all buyers. We're all basically buying into a product that is the Maryland Major Soccer League. And if we're investing our time, our players, our resources, our money, we want we're doing that all together.
Right. A rising
And
tide lifts all boats, right?
exactly. And another analogy would also be iron sharpens iron here, which
Right.
is, if if three teams really are doing it really well, they're going to recognize that and they're going to put their best out towards each other. And I'm not talking necessarily about soccer scores or results or talents. I'm just talking about the product that is the club that's trying to grow. And higher divisions will recognize that. And I would say right now, it is one can look at the Maryland majors and there are currently 10 teams that all have a very attractive product, essentially. It's an entertainment. It's all entertainment. So there are 10 that have a very interesting and all very different and very unique styles of play, styles of broadcasting themselves, and styles of identity. And it's how it should be even. And I think that's fun. I think it's excellent. And we'll see who comes out on top at the end of it. But nonetheless, the ones who do the work, the ones that really grind and do their due diligence, find success.
All right, so I just have like maybe a couple more questions before we wrap it up. But you were talking about when you were getting the team kind of off the ground and reaching out to contacts and stuff. What is it like to, I guess, find the type of players? Right, these are all amateurs. Like you're going and looking for amateur players, and then you also, how does like a whole kit process go? Making the kits, like who do you get in contact for that type of stuff? And were was anybody like drawing ideas up, or how does that work when you're just getting started?
Okay. The the design came first of sorry, let me rephrase. The design of the club identity came first.
Right.
Myself and my colleagues, Ben and Joe, we knew that we wanted to be operating a team that fervently made the Baltimore identity part of its operations on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on certain days. So that included a simple design, something that would stand out, didn't need to be too flashy. I'm also so my background is crisis management and program management. So I am a stickler when it comes to finding the best price for value and things like that. So I knew that I I wasn't focused on making a clothing brand. I didn't want BCFC to hyper focus on like, well, we have to be the attractive,
Right.
we have to have the attractive jersey. No, we had to have a winning team and a winning experience that the jersey played a secondary role to the identity and not the other way around. And I think that's really key. I think there are teams out there who have done it the other way around, and I have thoughts on that. But
Yeah.
um, the idea and the identity came first, and that was the easiest part, to be absolutely honest. That's something it's not difficult to put together. We then knew that we had to have local backers, so we reached out to a number of personal connections that we had to organizations that were trying to broaden their marketing and advertising through sports. That they were very quickly enthusiastic about it and were early supporters. We all then had to find our main sponsor, who ended up being Guilford Hall Brewing, and that was a stroke of planets aligning, stroke of luck. Walked in, and they told me what they wanted. I had already showed them what I wanted, and within 5 minutes, we had a shake of hands, basically saying, "Okay,
That's awesome.
this is what we're going to do. We're going to slap you on there. We're going to start selling this with your name on it, and we're going to send everybody your way whenever you do a soccer event." And that's what happened. It's mutually beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy's joined on a little later, but I think that was because they wanted to just sort of, I don't know, but they reached out and maybe they wanted to see that we were not a bunch of jokers, that we were
Right.
pretty serious about this, and they've been excellent as well. So that's sort of everything that took place in the first phase, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
All the players are amateur. All the players are amateur, and of the player pool that we've had the entire year, because about 10 of them are currently playing in college,
Right.
2/3 we knew. Either Ben, Joe, or myself knew. Joe is pretty active in college soccer. Ben is pretty active in development soccer in the DC area, and I'm pretty active in sort of arena soccer in the Baltimore area, as well as soccer in Columbia. So we pulled a couple of players together and said, okay, we can build a core around this. And then we posted tryout dates, and we realized, scrap that. Now we have 100 people to pick from, and let's see. Let's make it very clear that we wanted a mentality of a player that would fight for this position that they wanted to play in. And what happened was we fielded an A team and a B team, first team and reserves, and players have moved between the two based off of form, injury, whatever the strategy required that weekend, and competition for certain positions. That's still ongoing too. And we were able to bring in some players that are ex pros that went through an injury or a life event that halted that phase of their career and are slowly looking to get back into this either at semi pro or low level pro level. They've been excellent leaders. I think we've found natural leaders out of people who didn't expect to be, maybe, and have given them an opportunity. There are players that come to mind that walked on and told us, yeah, I've never been part of a youth academy. I've never been, parents couldn't afford it. I'm not going to college. I'm working construction. I just want to play. And they're a starter. They're regular starters because they are talented individuals. Joe and Ben have done I remove myself from all operations related to soccer and development and practice as much as possible. I fill in when needed, but generally my role doesn't involve myself with any of that. But when I sit down on the bleachers as a fan and watch the game and sometimes come out to practices and see how it goes, it's very clear that Joe and Ben have built something very special. That's obvious when you win a title in your first. It's twice so if you win it back to back. And it's especially true when you're competing for it again in your third season. That's everything that took place before the first kick of the ball.
Wow, that's awesome. I just like hearing about some of that
Yeah.
local stuff and how you get this started because it's always been an interesting thing when looking at how it. My dream has always been win the lottery, start a team, right? Haven't won the lottery, but uh,
Well, I think, yes, of course. I think a number of Baltimore locals were really trying their luck these past couple of weeks with the lottery and saying that'll be the person to bring USL to
right,
Baltimore.
right.
Sure, and somebody probably would and would pay out of the nose to play them at the bank or the new Under Armour place, and probably then sell it to somebody else. But that didn't happen. And what does exist is a team that is backed by local organizations.
Mm-hmm.
It's run by locals. The players are all like super local, and everyone, everyone involved with the club, directly or indirectly, right to the fans that come to our game regularly, knows that this is something unique. This is something special. And I wasn't there for the Bohemians period,
Mm-hmm.
but I've heard a lot about it, and it sounds like it's the same atmosphere at our games as it was then. I think that's really important because that's how it should be. I mean, it is essentially the same core overlapping audience. It's a question of how can you make it bigger? How can you grow it? How can you make this right for everyone and be sensible about it? Don't make any gambles, don't make any assumptions. Know what you know and know what you don't know, and then that's how your project, or in this case the club, will actually be successful, and it has been. I think next year is going to be super exciting. I can't wait. I'm hoping our first choice location, it's very likely to be where we're going to be. And it's going to be transformative to us, transformative to soccer in the area and fans of the sport, because it's going to allow people to spend 2 hours every single week on a Saturday or Sunday uh, be part of a new revolution that is Baltimore soccer, and one that's probably sustainable. And we'll see who pays attention, because I know certain individuals are paying attention. I know from government to private enterprise, people know who we are, and they're really paying attention to the way things are, and that is, do people actually go to games? Are there customers? Are there people who really want to see this grow? And that I don't care about. What I do care about is, as a fan, being with other fans and celebrating and supporting a team that is in my area and that I feel intrinsically connected with. And that's not necessarily a very hard concept to understand, as I imagine you will agree with.
Yes. Yeah, I mean for so long I've been wanting a team, just like any team here, because like when I started following soccer, is like the closest team was DC. I actually jumped on to I started really paying attention to Major League Soccer in 2010 and started following the Union, but that's still an hour and a half up the road from me and stuff. So it's been something I wanted. That's why I even created the Charm City Soccer Cast. I was hoping, I can cover all levels of Maryland or Baltimore soccer with that. So I just want to thank you for coming on again. And if you wanted to share where anybody can follow the club on socials or anything like that.
Sure. I'll actually start by saying we got 3 games left in the regular season. We are in I think, a 4-team battle for the playoff spots.
Wow.
Uh, it is very tight, and we play the other 3. We
Oh,
play each one of them, so it is entirely in our destiny. Um, I would I would seriously argue that having noise in the stands does help us immensely. I mean, I wouldn't say, I know it does. I've seen it happen, and
right.
the players have told me it's an immense boost. These guys don't do well in silence. They do well in chaos, both on and off, the field that they're playing on. Aside from that, oh yeah, Sundays, every Sunday at Latrobe Park. I think those are the remaining days. Playoffs will probably be at Latrobe Park as well. But in the meantime, you can find a lot more about us mostly on Instagram, at Baltimore City FC 23. We're on Facebook, we're on TikTok as well, we're on Twitter and YouTube as well. YouTube, you'll find all of our um, past couple of game broadcasts.
Oh,
But what's going to be coming out relatively soon, I'm super excited for. I work with a talented um, graduate out of Bowie State called Shania Gordon. She and I are going to postseason be working on a little bit of a Welcome to Wrexham style documentary, because we have a bunch of footage that we started filming well back in spring, and we've just been too busy to compile it. But postseason, we've already started doing storyboards for it, and you're going to find, if you weren't there for the final, if you weren't there for the summer games, if you weren't there for the tough season that is this fall, that's okay, because you're going to find out more about us, how it was, and where we're going to, as the news trickles out regarding 2024, you're going to find it there as well as all of our other sources of information.
awesome. That sounds amazing. That welcome to Baltimore, hun. Right there you go.
Yeah.
Um, but thank you, Nick, for coming on again, and love to have you on again sometime in the future if you wanted to talk more
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
the club when more news comes out in the future.
Yeah,
All right.
Jordan, it's been a pleasure. I really thank you for reaching out. This has been great. I think that this is what you do is really important for the sport, especially for this area, and you play a key role. Can't let it go to waste.
Thank you.